So for the last 2 months, I've been training very differently. In fact, triathlon hasn't even featured on this channel for quite some time, and there's a very good reason for that. And that's because as we go into the incoming autumn and winter, I wanted to change things up a little. After every triathlon season where I've enjoyed my racing, but also all the training that goes into it and getting to go to different places to do it. Now my body's pretty well tuned in and pretty fit by the end of it. And one thing I always notice is I'm incredibly light, and by light I mean my weight. Now there are hours and hours of aerobic endurance training whereby, you're combining your swimming, your cycling, your running, and all of that sure burns a stupid amount of calories and energy. But when I look back at my season, I think I probably had the best year of training, preparation and racing in my life. All my races went really well. I set a couple of PBs in the 70.3 distance. I podiumed in my other races, won my first trophy. So all of that kind of shouts success. But, there's a bit of a price to pay for all of that. And that's comes in the form, I think, of burnout and tiredness, and following that structure, that training all the time kind of wears you down a little bit. And hence there's been a little bit of break on the channel, and why you haven't seen me for a few months. But here we are, end of summer, beginning of autumn, going into winter, so I decided to change things up a little bit, and this is what I'm about to do. I'm about to spend my next 3 to 4 months being a hybrid athlete. Okay, so let's talk about why I came to this decision. Right, so the first thing that I did, I decided to get my bloods checked against 56 different biomarkers, and I did that through MediChecks. Maybe I'll make a video about that at another point. And really the point of that was really to look at were there any changes that I could make within my diet, and to check that things were normal in my body, or whether there were any red flags or things that I needed to consider looking at. Now the second thing was to sort my diet out, and that's not just because of the MediChecks results, but it's something that I was really keen to do because I feel that there's improvements that can be made. And that doesn't mean to say that I have a terrible diet, not the case at all, but I definitely felt that there was things that I needed to adjust, and I wanted to be able to eat a lot more wholesome foods. I also wanted to take into account the energy expenditure that I have, and really make sure that I eat more protein. In fact, a hell of a lot more protein. And the third thing that I wanted to do and really focus in on was strength training and lifting, and really paying a much more dedicated approach to that, like I probably do with my triathlon training. So what does this all mean, I hear you say? Well, strength training has been something that I've always done. I'm not new to it. I've always done it year on year to some sort of degree. I don't approach it the way that I approach my triathlon training, and that is with a bit of science and a bit of guile behind it. So the idea really is for me to lift and eat well over the next sort of 10 to 12 weeks, gain a little bit more strength, gain a little bit more muscle, a little bit more weight. That's really the ultimate goal. Now, I'm not aiming to be some sort of muscle man or anything like that. The whole point of this is for me to make some long-lasting changes, particularly with my diet. But also, I think it's going to set me up for the incoming season next year really well. I'm hoping that, I will go under 5 hours next year, and I'm pretty sure I'm very close to that now. And it's just making, these changes and seeing whether the adaptations that I make will have an impact into that. You've got to keep it interesting, you've got to change things, you've got to try different things, and that's really what I'm trying to do. Now, I guess you may be wondering, well, what does that mean for all my other training in terms of my swimming, my cycling and my running? And as you can see, running is still happening. I'm still running. I'm out on my Sunday long run actually, but it will remain a focus for me over the winter, along with the strength training, hence the hybrid approach, because I do believe this is where the gains are to be made. So yeah, 4th run this week, along with 4 strength training sessions, makes for a pretty good week. After having a break over the summer, I am aiming to keep working on my run, and that has been pretty difficult initially since managing the load that I'm having to take on in the gym. And it has been affecting some of my runs, and especially, you know, where you want to try and do a quality run or a key session. That's been the hardest thing about adjusting to all this, and that's something myself and my coach are still working out, but we are getting closer to finding the right balance. So then it leaves just swimming and cycling or biking. And what does it mean for those? Does it mean I'm not doing those anymore? But actually, no. As you can see, I'm still biking and I'm also still swimming. But everything in this sort of domain is pretty low key, and what I'd consider maintenance work. It does make it harder with training in the gym and, you know, ensuring that your calorie intake is sufficient and meets the demands of what you're doing. And the good example of that is this week, where I haven't actually put on any additional weight this week. It's remaining stable, and that's probably because I've done 3 extra aerobic sessions. So I have to consider that. And, you know, gaining weight and muscle is that little bit harder with the more aerobic work that you do. But on the other side, you know, it is a balance, because I don't want to lose too much aerobic fitness. I'm probably into my 5th week of proper strength training. I did do a few preload weeks just to get with lighter weights and that sort of thing, just to get the muscles primed for it. But I've been very strict at tracking a number of things. And one of those things that I've been tracking are all of the lifts that I'm carrying out in the gym to ensure that there is progressive overload. And there is a shout out here that goes to the Joe Delaney push app, which I've been using, which I think is really good for that, because not only can you have it open in the gym and you can track your lifts and put in the weights you're using, and it has rest timers on it as well, which is really good between sets. But it also calculates the progressive overload for you. So the next time you open the workout out in the gym, the additional weight would have been added and things like that. So it is good for that fact. Now, the other app that I've been using is the MyFitnessPal app, which really helps you track your calories, your macronutrients, but by inputting all the food and things that you're consuming through the day. I'm using that app actually less than what I did to begin with. In fact, I haven't used it at all this week, and that's because I wanted to use it to work out and teach me what it would take and what I'd need to do to actually consume the calories I needed and the amount of protein that I wanted in my diet. Now, I will say that this app was really good at providing me with what I needed, but the caveat is that you have to be really on top of it. You have to, everything you consume has to go into it. And it's quite difficult when you're making meals for your family to then sort of calculate the macronutrients around that. But it has been really good at helping me understand my diet, and now I can start to trust myself about the things that I'm consuming, because I know what the macronutrient content is of certain things, and it just makes life easier. Now, it has to be said that I don't believe that tracking everything that you eat is a long-term sustainable thing to do. It's cumbersome. There are days when you go out to a restaurant and things like that you don't really want to have to worry about it. So doing it long term, doing it full time for that sense, I don't think it's sustainable in any effect. And like I said, there's a means to an end with it, and I think I've found that with it now. So for now, the thing that I must do is just carry on and have faith and trust in the process for the next 10 to 12 weeks and see where we're at. I'm going to carry on with the diet and making sure I eat well. It hasn't been hard at all, really, cutting out some of the things that I thought that I enjoy. But, I might do some videos around that, because there are some sort of flags that came out from the Medichecks and blood work as well. But yeah, it's about carrying on with that. My weight has steadily increased over the last 5 weeks. I've been putting on about 1/2 kilo to 3/4 kilo every week. So it's been a nice steady increase, and we'll just keep that going until we get to a point where I think, okay, I'm happy with that, and then we'll see where we go from that. So stay tuned, guys, because there are some other videos around all of what I've talked about today coming up in the pipeline, and the channel will be back online as it always has been in the past, seeing us into next season. So thanks for sticking around and tuning in.